Welcome to MedTech Conference, live out of Toronto, not Mars, but maybe later in the future. We got Scott here, super excited, and we got my co-host Randy, and so glad you're here. Just tell us a little about you, your role, and maybe one little thing that people don't know about you.
Sure. So, corporate head of regulatory affairs at Hologic right now. The bulk of my time is actually looking at regulatory policy and regulatory intelligence and making sure that that information gets filtered into the organization, and then that we're able to do some things with that to make sure that the company stays compliant and stays ahead of things. So that's the biggest thing that I have going on within my role. Probably one of the things that most people don't know about me is that I have 4 granddaughters and a great-grandson and a great-granddaughter. So
wow.
That's the size of my family.
Really?
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I also, just a little bit of learning, interviewing super smart people like yourself at this conference. You are tasked with a lot of stuff with regulatory. I can't believe all the workings of that. And so really glad you're here. And this conference is amazing. And I loved your setup. And tell me what is kind of the pulse you're seeing with this conference and sort of about Hologic, just over this last year or so?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, a couple of things that I'm seeing at the conference, honestly, obviously it's AI and ML enabled products. That's, at the forefront of a lot of these things. The other is transparency and convergence of regulations around the globe. I think that there's a lot more countries that are beginning to implement their own regulatory schemes, and the countries that are more mature in that space are trying to help shepherd them along. So they're helping them to utilize some of the IMDRF guidance documents that many of these regulators have put together. And so we've got countries in Central America, South Africa, some of these other regions that are smaller countries, don't necessarily have the infrastructure. They're beginning to build up their regulatory infrastructure, but they're trying to do it in a way that is consistent with how other regulators are doing, which is a great thing for manufacturers, because now we don't have 50 different kinds of schemes that we have to follow. We've got maybe 1 or 2 different schemes that we can follow and still be pretty compliant.
So for a non-tech regulatory guy like myself, like basically let's all use the same Wi-Fi maybe or something.
Let's all use the same rules of the road.
Okay.
So it's these are the kinds of documents that we're looking for. These are the requirements that we need to have in order to get it into your country, those kinds of things. So, having those same rules of the road makes it a lot easier for manufacturers, but it also helps to make the products a lot more compliant, easier to be compliant.
And then my little signature question is like, that must impact patients, better patient care, because if you're not able to just move along, right? I mean,
it makes it easier to get those products to the patients, because it makes it easier to legally place those products on the market. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so the new metric I've learned at this conference, MTAIQ, mean time to the AI question.
That's awesome.
Somebody else said, "Oh, it's been 6 minutes until the first AI question." So I'm giving it a formal metric. All right. So talk to us, why in Hologic's business specifically, how is it important? How does it help? And what are some of the challenges?
AI in particular. One of the things that I heard earlier this week here at the conference is really, it's not so much what the technology can bring to it. It's more about answering the question of scarce resources. By 2030, we're going to see most of the baby boomers either at retirement age or retirement eligible. And so that means that amount of the workforce in the healthcare system are going to be exiting, and we're not filling that pipeline with as many people coming in. So you're going to have less people in the healthcare system to be able to take care of patients. What we're finding with incorporating AI into our mammography systems is that it's helping to speed that throughput for the radiologist to be able to read those things. It's giving them better precision and accuracy, and it's also reducing the false positives. And actually, the reduction in the false positives is probably one of the biggest things, because now you're not having somebody worrying about, do I potentially have cancer? And then having to figure out, okay, I need to find a way to get there. I need to find a babysitter. I need to take time out of my job. All of this other kind of stuff.
What's the cost? And just
the cost of having to do that all over again. So those are some of the things that we're finding as beneficial. Some of the challenges that we're finding is just being able to get enough good data to be able to do the training of the systems, to do retraining, because those algorithms from time to time will drift. And so you need to be able to correct those and bring them back into performance characteristics. I mean, these are locked algorithms primarily, but at some point in time, we're going to have to take care of generative AI that's coming in, or unlocked adaptive algorithms. You know, that's something that has been discussed. I don't think that nut has been cracked as far as how you're going to do that on an ongoing V&V basis, verification and validation. But that is something that I think is coming down the road to benefit some of these products as well, which will help to personalize the care of those patients in those different areas of the country and those kinds of things.
So I think it'd be interesting for people to know, just to sort of say that software is eating the medical device. More and more the value of medical device becomes delivered. Maybe you could give us just a rule of thumb. 20 years ago, I mean, you're doing this a while. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and today, what percentage of your time in regulatory affairs is related to software and AI and ML? Has that gone up over time?
It has gone up. 20 years ago, I would say next to nothing. It was, you know, back then it was Palm Pilots. If you remember those, those, you know, PDAs, so, you know, the PDAs and those kinds of things, and those were kind of the up and coming thing. You know, everybody was still kind of chagrined to have lost their BlackBerry because they liked the keyboard that was on it. And there was no software for, say, support of the registration of these products. So it was all manual. You were printing papers out and you were stamping, you know, on those page numbers and those kinds of things. Today, you've got, you know, eStar with the FDA, and you can send an electronic file in, and you don't have to do that paper copy anymore. So, I mean, from both the standpoint of the product lines as well as the tools that are available for regulators to be using, there's been a huge influx of software, and having to be able to understand what that software can and can't do. You know, it's much easier, in my opinion, to look at a widget and physically say, okay, yeah, I can see this physical widget can do this, that, or the other. It's harder to do that with software, and so just having to do that continuous learning as a regulator, being able to understand that science and things like that,
as well as a regulatory affairs professional and leader.
Yes, very much so. I mean, to be able to understand what good software development looks like, what good verification documentation looks like, understanding the impact of bias, understanding what software can and cannot do, and those kinds of things. Yeah, you definitely have to understand that as a reg affairs person.
So let me ask you an off-the-cuff question. If you saw a resume that came to you, somebody who had been in software engineering and made the leap to regulatory affairs, would that jump out to you? It's like, wow, that could actually be a really good skill set to have. Or no?
I think so, but in my experience, it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years for a regulatory affairs person to be able to come up to speed, to be be an independent contributor to a project team. Having the regulations in front of you and the guidance documents in front of you to read is one thing. Being able to interpret and apply them in a real world scenario to understand how manufacturing works in a medical device company, how development works in a medical device company, is something that you can gain with experience, but not necessarily that you can gain out of a book.
There's a lot of trade craft.
There is a lot of trade craft. So, but I would love to see somebody that has a software background, that knows how software is developed, get an interest in regulatory affairs and want to make that jump. You know, you can do that training.
One last question. You come to this conference. Why? What do you get? What do you get out of it? What are you looking to get out of it this year?
Well, what I'm looking to get out of it is just to meet up with old colleagues and meet new colleagues, meet face to face with some of the regulators that are here. So we've got representatives here from the U.S., Health Canada, Brazil, Japan, MHRA out of the UK. So being able to meet those regulators face to face and let them see you and know you're a real person and be able to attach a name to a face is really important, I think, for building the networks. just having those connections, I think, is super important. The other piece is just, understanding what's going on and hearing the nuggets that come out of some of these sessions. A lot of times it's not the formal presentation that you really get the information from. It's the questions that come from the audience.
Yeah.
Then you get a couple of nuggets that, oh, I didn't hear about that. And that could be an important piece of information.
If you're lucky, there's one presentation that's solid gold from the beginning.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It just kind of blows your mind.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Scott, it's been awesome to
All
have
right.
you. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up.
All right. Thanks,
Yeah.
Andy.
Take care.